5th County Commission meeting. If you'd stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would silence your cell phones, that would be great. Meeting documents are next to Commissioner Bender, and Robert can help you with listening device. With that, we'll start routine business. I'd consider a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Move in a second. Any changes or additions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 2 is to approve the County Commission minutes of February 16th.
Approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any corrections? If not, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item 3 is the bills to be paid for $343,408.13.
Pay the bills.
Second.
A motion and a second, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, today's bills include just about $22,000 for interpreter costs, and it's not well known that we have to pay those kinds of costs. I wonder if the state's attorney might comment on that for a moment.
Sure, it's just another cost that the county steps in and covers to assure access to the courts for everyone who has a language barrier, and that's a burden that we take on as the county.
Thank you, Kirsten. Any other comments? With that, all those in favor of paying the bills, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously passes. Reports, there's a report from the Register of Deeds on the fees collected in January 2016. Item 5 is routine action. Consider a motion to approve routine personnel actions.
So moved.
A motion and a second. Carrie, do you have any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Item number 6. Pam's not here, but it looks like Kyle is.
You'll get second best today.
No, we're happy you're here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kyle Halseth, Director of Equalization. In Pam's absence, I would like to present for your approval an assessment freeze, record ID 44259, in the amount of $1,155.06.
Anyone have any questions for Kyle?
Since that's a property tax freeze, Mr. Chairman, should we approve that one separately?
Yeah, we do need to do it
I'll make a
separately.
motion to approve that.
Second.
And to approve the assessment freeze, RDID 44259. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously passes. We'll go to the next item.
Items B through I are homes that were razed or destroyed or burnt or something that happened within the city of Sioux Falls. It's been about a month and a half since they've had these, and they got them back to us. So the rest of them are all razed or fire properties. First one is Barbara Bowden, record ID 49883, taxes in the amount of $2,137.74. Item C is Leslie Barnes, record ID 53978, in the amount of $913.62. Item D, Graham Equity LLC, record ID 58257, in the amount of $5,665.10. Item E, Cheryl Taylor, record ID 28495, in the amount of $4,297.83. Item F, Cliff Avenue Properties, record ID 53377, in the amount of $235.77. Cliff Avenue Properties, record ID 53376, in the amount of $230.58. Item H, Clark Street Properties, record ID 41199, in the amount of $262.16. And item I is St. John American Lutheran Church of Sioux Falls, record ID 43854, in the amount of $934.40.
Thank you, Kyle. Does anyone have any questions about items B through I?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask Kyle on I. That's for St. John's American Lutheran Church. So they had a house that they were paying property tax on. They weren't property exempt, being a nonprofit. And so then they tore down the house, is this?
That's correct. The garage is still there. It was torn down on June 18th, 2015.
So it wasn't the parsonage or anything?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Kyle?
Vote to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve items B through I. All those, correct? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Commissioners.
Item 7 is a notice and request authorize the auditor to publish a notice of hearing for retail on-sale liquor license for Badlands Motor Speedway, and the legal track is there, at 2012 South Split Rock Boulevard in Brandon. Item 8, there is no planning and zoning notices.
You need a motion on the authorization.
Oh, I'm sorry, you sure do.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Thank you, Dick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion unanimously passes. Item 8, we've done. Item 9, petitions for compromise. I don't believe we have any this week. Next item is an opportunity for public comment. If anyone has a comment to make about something that is not on the agenda, we'd be happy to hear that. We do not. Item number 10. Lynn, would you like to talk about the motion to consider the county rural fire and ambulance service funding policy?
Good morning, Commissioners. Linda Young, Emergency Management Office. As you know, the County Commission appropriates funds for both the rural fire departments and the rural ambulance services within Minnehaha County. In 2016, the fire departments will receive $517,961, and the Del Rapids, Garrettson, and Humboldt ambulances are budgeted to receive $50,000 from the county. The money is typically distributed on a biannual basis with a simple process of them basically filling out or actually signing a voucher that's been pre-filled out for them by the county. That comes in on a biannual basis, and then we fund them after that. The method, we've looked at that. Kim and I have the last couple months, along with Auditor Litz, and determined that it's probably not consistent with the other accounting processes that the county follows. We've also had discussions with the state Department of Legislative Audit, and are recommending that the County Commission changes the way that they provide funding to the rural fire and EMS organizations. Currently, as I said right now, there's the county budgets the dollars. They provide a simple signature on a voucher, and then we fund them. What we're recommending the commission do is that we kind of flip-flop that, and we get them to provide expenses that are eligible or that the county commission deems eligible, and then those will come to my office. We'll review them to ensure that they are consistent with the county policy, and then we'll fill out a voucher and sign it and forward it on to the auditor's office. They'll get their first half payment, and then the process will be repeated after that. In the last several weeks, I've briefed Commissioner Heiberger, Commissioner Barth. They're supportive of the process, and Kim Adamson has also been highly involved in this process. So I'm looking for guidance from the commission on the possible policy change, and I'd be willing to answer any questions, and you could sure ask those of Kim also. Within the packet, we've included a list of things that would be eligible under the reimbursement process, how that would work, and then just a simple spreadsheet of when those rural fire rescue agencies have an expenditure, they would fill out the spreadsheet, send it to our office, and then we would reimburse based on the information that they provide.
Thank you, Lynn. Does anyone have any questions for Lynn?
Mr. Chairman, I would just comment that I think they could always lobby us for other things that we could look at on an individual basis, but we've not had these kinds of restraints on them in the past, and we're going to learn, they're going to learn, and certainly the fire stuff has their own funding source. The ambulance has been an item out of our general fund, whereas the fire departments have their own levy.
Correct. Within the county budget, there's a fire levy that's currently 0.15 mils, and that is how the county arrives at the $517,000 that they give them. It's divided based on a formula that was agreed upon many years ago, and then it goes out to them. The ambulance departments receive Baltic, or Del Rapids, Garrettson, and Humboldt ambulances receive $50,000 each this budget year as a result of funds from the general fund.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kelly?
Lynn, does this mean we're going to, they'll have to submit, let's take the ambulance and the 50,000, that they're gonna have to submit vouchers each month instead of giving them a lump sum payment, we're gonna,
I hope that they submit twice a year, because that's when taxes come in April and November, and that they would collect their information before that time period, include the invoice or whatever documentation that they need, submit it to us, we'll review it, and then we'll give them still a lump sum payment of $25,000 for those records. So,
well, up to 25, right?
yep, it'll
I
be
mean,
once
yeah.
in April, and then once in November after the county collects its tax returns. Because currently, right now, before the policy is approved, there's two ambulance services that have already collected their dollars. So we'll go back this year and get some information hopefully for them. But as we move forward, twice a year based on collection of property taxes, basically, Commissioner.
And the same with rural fire.
Correct.
And I think it's important people know that those rural fire funds cannot be used for ambulance.
Yep.
Is that correct?
The fire funds, and I'm not an absolute expert on the levy. Kirsten might be able to help answer some of that on the legal speak, but typically, the ambulance services are separate entities within those communities. So,
Do you have a comment about that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the fire levy is for fire services. I mean, that's straightforward, and your authorization to spend on that is in Chapter 3431. I think this policy is consistent with that, keeping that separated out, those sources.
Commissioner Bender?
Lynn, I just wanted, my understanding is that you did meet with the rural agencies and
Yep.
went over this change with them, and there weren't a lot of
No,
questions or objections.
I think they understand that there's a need for continued information by the taxpayers of the county, and to ensure that things are being spent consistent with other county policies, because the county really does collect these dollars. The county does not have to collect the dollars, and in discussions with the legislative audit, there's really no quote best practices out there that counties can use. For example, Lincoln County uses a different formula where they send it to a separate fire board, and then the fire board decides. In Brookings County, the commissioners actually sit down and decide which bills should be paid through their fire funds. That's something that I don't think you want to get into, and I don't think we have a need to get into. So we're creating a different method so that the fire rescue agencies or fire departments and ambulances still get the dollars. It's just that we need documentation first to be consistent with other county policies that we have. Basically, we don't, in discussions with Kim and Bob, we don't typically just front the dollars and not have any idea on what the expenses will be later on. So,
This basically is a cost report to show the activity, correct?
yeah. And the goal, if I might just interject,
Sure.
the goal from our office is to get them every single dollar that they're allocated by the commission. It's just, like I said, we need documentation ahead of time because, as we've seen over the past, that's the expectation of the policymakers and the citizens that pay the taxes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Well, I agree 100% with this thing. We won't be looking at any other funds I have, which are just the funds that we,
Currently,
through to them, or control.
currently the only funds that we'll be looking at are the ones that you have indicated here on the memo. Obviously, they have other funds from townships, from fundraisers, from grants, from cities that they also have contractual agreements with. Those are not in there right now. If you do remember, a couple years ago, there was some discussion both with the county commission and at the township level about funding. We took a one-time snapshot in 2014. You haven't asked us to do that again of all their funding sources. But subsequently, as indicated, with some changes in the auditor's office, some recognition of how this works as opposed to how the other county spending policies work, we thought it was a good idea to bring it forward, so.
If I may, I think it'd probably be something we need this before budget time this year, just on the ambulances, not on the fire side.
Yep, and that would be something that you could ask the ambulances for because they get a general fund allotment as opposed to a levy, so.
Commissioner Barth?
Well, there are two different entities, and again, the one has a set funding device, and in the past, I know we've made one-time purchases kind of outside of that, like the foam truck.
Yep.
By the way, do they do parties? I don't know. Anyway, the foam truck was pretty expensive, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And then
that,
park it up at Baltic, or?
yeah, it's in Crooks and everything, and so there is, what Commissioner Barth is describing is the budget this year is $517,961, but because it's my understanding, and the auditor's office can help, there's always a little bit left in there, and that's because, you know, if you build your house in April and there's only a partial year's of taxes there, that's not allocated, you know, the first year. So then a little bit of it gets added to the bottom line. In the past, the commission has allowed the rural fire chiefs to bring forth projects, and those projects could be funded based on what's left out of the allocation. And I think this year, what was left out of the allocation to the group was about, and I didn't see all the reports, but about $60,000 to $70,000. So not a ton, but there are some funds there. So.
And, Mr. Chairman, on the ambulance side of things, back before I became a commissioner, we gave each of them $5,000 a year to accumulate towards buying new trucks, new ambulances. Well, because of the lack of volunteers available in some of the smaller towns, they wanted to hire professional staff during the day. And at one point, we were subsidizing each of them at the rate of $90,000 a year, I believe. It was, but cumulatively, $270,000. And this last couple of years, it's been $50,000 or $65,000 in that area, and that money is always in jeopardy in budget times. We, not necessarily in jeopardy, but we look at it carefully.
So if I could comment on that,
Certainly.
Commissioner Barth, or excuse me, Commissioner Benega. What Commissioner Barth is discussing is and Kim and I have been doing some homework. We're not fully prepared to brief you yet, but as you know, there's been other discussion about rural EMS funding. Commissioner Barth and Commissioner Heiberger and I and the County Commission Office had a discussion earlier this year. So Kim and I are starting to put together basically for your budget needs and just for some history, but basically a timeline of how the County Commission got involved in funding the ambulance service, and then a vote that happened in 2008 to have a rural ambulance district so that they would charge their own dollars as opposed to having a county general fund allocation. So we've got some holes in that yet, so it's not ready for you. It's kind of a work in progress, but we hope that in the future that we would be able to present a timeline that says in 2001, this is what the funding level is. It ramped up similar to what Commissioner Barth had indicated and what it is today or the last several years. But that funding agreement's not, or that timeline isn't ready yet. As you know, we've lost some institutional knowledge, I would say, over the last year, 18 months. So going back and building some of that as a result of that is what we're doing now.
Thank you, Lynn. Does anyone else have any comments, questions? Kim, do you have any comments to make? If you would like, we would like a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the implementation of the funding policy that's been presented. With all those, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you.
Yep, the only thing I want to say is, for anyone out there watching rural fire EMS, once again, the goal is to get them all their dollars that have been approved. And we'll work hard to do that. We realize that in the first time here, we're going to see some possible irregularities, but as we get going, rest assured for the citizens and those departments, they'll get all those dollars that the county commission has allocated for them. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 11 is to consider a bid award for project MC 110-118 BM16, which is rehabilitation of county highway structure. Identified DJ Boothby.
Good morning, Commissioners. DJ Boothby, Highway Superintendent. This is a bid award for bids that we received last week for the bridge rehabilitation of two different structures, 50-192-040 and 50-241-080. Both of those have links in your packets for the locations on the maps. One of them is just by Eros, and then one of them is just south of Del Rapids on County Highway 110. We received bids. The engineer's final cost estimate was $982,000 for this work, and we received two bids, the low one being Sioux Falls Construction, or Journey Group as they're called now, at an amount of $781,526.50, about $200,000 less than the bid estimate, and so we're recommending award to that. We have gone through the bid tabulation and are recommending award and asking for your approval to sign the contract.
Thank you, DJ. Any questions? If not, is there,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
we have a motion and a second to approve the bid award to Journey Group, which is actually Sioux Falls Construction, for $781,526.50. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimously passes. Item 12, DJ.
This is for our annual chip seal program. This year, our chip sealing program is for approximately 44 miles. We received bids last week. We received 4 different bids, and they were extremely competitive. They ranged from $912,754 to $931,457. So extremely tight bids, very good bids based off of last year's unit price numbers. We estimated this year's cost to be $1.1 million, or just over $1.1 million. So the low bid is Road Guy Construction at $912,754.50, and that's a savings from the engineer's cost estimate of over $239,000. So we are requesting your approval to execute that contract.
Questions for DJ? Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, this is bid on this is a quantity item, right?
It's a
So
unit-
there'll be
unit.
adjustments. Does it have any bearing on price of the product?
The oil prices are
Effective at all?
extremely low right now, and so that was the reason that we got such great bids. And so we might look at increasing the quantities if the contractor is open to that during construction. But likely what we'll do is, what we plan on doing is constructing the bid quantity for the routes that are planned.
But there won't be an adjustment due to price of, we're
There's,
locked in on the price now.
right, we're locked in on the price, yep. There's
Thank
no
you.
allotment for a future price change.
Any other questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommendation to use Road Guy Construction as a low bid of $912,754.50 for the annual chip seal.
Move for approval on that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion unanimously carries. Item 13 is a contract amendment in the amount of $238,000 to project MC 149, reconstruction of County Highway 149 between South Dakota Highway 38 and County Highway 122.
Commissioners, JSA Consulting Engineering Firm is currently in the final design agreement with us for the design of the 149 reconstruction project from Hartford going north. And their agreement is for $286,837. And we've completed a wetland delineation as part of that agreement. And so now the next step is, after the wetland delineation, we did find wetlands. And so we need to create a wetland mitigation plan. And so that is part of this amendment request. And then the second part is we held a public meeting in Hartford and had quite a bit of public feedback on the desire to have a bike path installed from Highway 38 going north towards the edge of town, at the edge of Hartford. We do agree that this is a good improvement to the project, and so JSA Consulting Engineers would need extra money to design that, prepare the exhibits, the easements, and conduct some landowner meetings. And so that is the remaining portion of this amendment request. The amendment total is $38,238, which would bring the entire agreement amount to $325,075.
Questions for DJ? Commissioner
I
Kelly?
Sorry, I should have called you on some of this. Of the 38,000, how much of that is due to the wetlands thing, and why was that not addressed initially? And then how much is to the bike trail?
I don't have actual dollar amounts. There is a breakdown. Oh, maybe I do. There is a breakdown of hours on the third and fourth page of the memo, and it does have a breakdown of dollars per person, but not per task. The work for the bike path is going to be the majority of that, just because there's so much involved in the design and the creation of the exhibits and that type of thing. And so I'm trying to look for a summary here real quick. The wetland mitigation plan, I think, is probably less than $10,000. And so the remaining portion, $28,000 or so, is going to be for the design of the bike path and the creation of the easements, the exhibits, et cetera. And so the reason that the wetland mitigation plan was not included in the original contract was because we did not have a quantifiable amount of wetlands that were going to be impacted. And so in that agreement, we had a wetland, what do we call it? An analysis of wetland delineation. And so the wetland delineation was included in that original agreement. Once we have the wetlands delineated and we know how much we are impacting, then the next step is to do a wetland mitigation plan. And the scope of a wetland mitigation plan can change drastically depending on how many wetlands you're impacting. And so now that we know how many we have, we know the type of mitigation that's going to be conducted. And this is going to be an off-site mitigation plan. And so it's basically the coordination of coordinating with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and a wetland mitigation bank program to purchase acreages of wetlands for them to hold as wetlands and monitor forever. That way we don't have to monitor them forever on the project.
So $28,000 on $145,000, that's a pretty high engineering. I don't understand.
It's a high percentage, and the reason that it is a high percentage is because the grading that is involved is a little bit more complex than just putting a road through a corridor, and the creation of easements and exhibits is a little bit more of a higher cost item, and then the coordination of the landowners. There's just a lot of work that goes into adding the bike path than a typical corridor project.
And Hartford will not be participating in the design side, only the
Right, that's what
$145,000.
That's what was negotiated with Hartford, yes. Yeah, and we're comfortable with that. We wanted to make sure that our design process was not held up due to any type of figuring out agreements or contract type stuff with the city of Hartford or with the county commission. We wanted to make sure that that process was able to keep moving forward.
Commissioner Bender, do you have a question?
Well, I was, as a clarification of the wetlands portion, it seems like the last two letters attached, there's a letter on November 3rd, and another letter on July 24th. July 21st. Is that for the entire wetlands mitigation, which would put it at, around $6,000, I think?
So
If I'm reading that correctly.
we are consulting with JSA Consulting Engineers, and they sub-consult with Clark Engineering
Okay.
for those services. And so the entire amount of $6,550 is Clark Engineering's portion of it. And then JSA will take that report and do further wetland mitigation plan.
Okay.
And so between $6,000 and $10,000 is what I would estimate the total dollar amount for the wetland mitigation bank plan to cost the county.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for DJ, Commissioner?
DJ, so on a sort of parallel track, you've suggested your department be permitted to make adjustments like this up to $50,000. Would this be an example of that, where you would want to go ahead and just, without bringing it to us, go ahead and make the decision to add the this additional to that contract?
Yeah, this is something that would be under that provision in the proposed purchasing policy that I would work with the liaison and the commission office and the auditor's office for the approvals, rather than have an agenda item.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Could I ask a follow-up question on that? So DJ, the bike path, would that have been budgeted? Because as I
The
understand.
bike path was not budgeted, no.
So then it would have come back to the commission if it was outside the budget?
Well, it was outside, it was outside of the scope of the project. The project is budgeted, and when that project was budgeted for, we scoped out a road project. And in that original scope, we didn't have a bike path as part of the original scope. And so after having a public meeting, the scope of the project was expanded upon. It will still fit easily within our total contract costs that we have budgeted for, but it's not something that was originally scoped. And similar to doing like a bridge maintenance project. We scope out what we think might happen during a bridge maintenance project, but until we go into design, we really have a hard time saying what exactly is going to be part of that scope.
Okay. It's helpful to see real-life examples of how that policy change
Sure.
might play out so that we can understand.
And this is a little bit of a unique amendment with the additional scope. I'll acknowledge that for sure.
Okay.
Typically, an amendment is for additional work that's not related to additional scope. It's maybe revisions that are unforeseen that happen throughout the course of the design.
And under that policy change, if the liaison thought that it was something that the commission ought to hear, ought to be presented, then they could certainly say that we want you to go ahead and bring that to the commission.
Yeah, I think that'd be great practice, and especially an example like this where there's additional scope, that could be something that the entire commission could consider.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve this contract amendment.
And that would be for the entire project of $38,238.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the contract amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion unanimously passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 14 is a briefing from the County Human Services Department on new reporting and data format. Carrie Benz. Good morning, Carrie.
Morning, Commissioners. Carrie Benz, Director for Human Services. I'm excited to be here this morning because we're actually you'll be able to see the fruition of a lot of time-intensive planning and labor that we've gone into working with the IT department and the Human Services Department. I'll have a couple of staff just introduce themselves since they're here with me this morning, but just to briefly give an overview, over the course of 2013, the IT department and Human Services embarked on a joint venture to develop a better way of managing our client records and maintaining better, more accurate data. And as of April 1st, 2014, we launched that system, and it's the Human Services Client Manager. And that's where we enter all of our data when we see clients and we manage their records in regards to any assistance that they're provided or any interaction that we have with the community. over the course of that time frame from April 1st, 2014 to now, it's just been working fabulously well. The IT department has been awesome to work with, and we really can't thank them enough for being patient and working with us on that. They've done a lot of due diligence. I also want to do a quick thank you and shout out to Carol Muller. Without Carol's leadership, when she was with us in the Human Services Department, she was really the prompt in making sure that we went more digital, more technology savvy, and so we thank her very much for that. We now have embarked on the second half of that journey, and we are creating reports and actually being able to extrapolate out of the data that we've entered into that system better numbers and reports for all of you as well as the community. So we know who we serve, we know the number we serve, and have better ability to make predictions for what our services might look like in the future. And so with me I have Jamie Phelps, who Jamie's kind of in the middle of making a little bit of a transition. He's been one of the supervisors for our emergency services group. And Jamie has kind of taken on the role of being our data recorder, creator, developer. We haven't really decided on a true title yet, to be truthful, because he's really assuming a lot of things in the office that are really going to take us forward, I think, in making us a better team, in being able to educate the public as well as all of you. So also with us is Lori Manis, our assistant director. And so this is her first time through the loop, and so we're hopeful that she'll be presenting and doing some of this too with all of you. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamie. We have a number of slides. You were presented copies of those, and we're really going to try to stay to our 10-minute time frame that we've promised Carol that we wouldn't go over. So I'll let Jamie go through the reports, and if you guys have questions, feel free to ask those as well. All right.
Hi, folks. Thank you. We'll start out here and just a quick look at total number of applications. And the reporting period here is for 2015. We realize it's been a while now with these transitions with staff and also with software. We haven't done a report for a while, so we thought we'd just do one for 2015 to give a quick look at the year last year here. Total number of applications, 6,750. Of those, I wanted to point out that only 238 were actually from Lincoln County, so majority of that's Minnehaha County applications. Then it breaks it down there by families with minor children, homeless families with children at 637, individuals without children, homeless individuals without children, and then all household members from applications, the total number of people affected there. There's a brief note there that explains that it's includes doubled up. The homeless numbers include doubled up, which means that they don't necessarily need to be living on the street or at a shelter or at a motel, that they could be, temporarily residing with family or friends, and that would meet the HUD definition of homelessness as well, be consistent with that. Here's the application count by status. You can see the number of applications in various statuses, such as pending or opened or withdrawn, closed, and then the percentages of each of those statuses. One of the things that kind of stood out to me here was the no further contact, nearly 11% there. Those are applications that have been closed out after 30 days for no further contact. They were incomplete applications, so individuals did not return information needed to determine eligibility, basically. So it seemed a little bit high to me, but quite frankly, things that we can't control, either they found other resources or decided not to follow up and that type of a thing. So resource statistics, wanted to point out here a few things. That the disability number, the number of folks that we serve that have disabilities is pretty high there, over 21%, and those are folks that are on SSI or SSDI or that have been approved for disability that we confirmed, but are yet awaiting some type of benefit. And also the employment stood out to me in terms of full-time and part-time employment. Nearly half the folks we serve are working full-time, part-time, or both. We also have a large number of people on SNAP, which tells me we serve a large population of the poor in the community. Nearly 50% are on SNAP. So basically the takeaway from this, we serve low-income folks, the working poor, and many of whom have disabilities. So that gives you a glance at that. Just the application, location by zip. We've got highlighted in red there. It shows you most of the individuals that we serve are in the 57104, 57103, so we mainly serve the downtown geographical location. Expenditures by type. Goes to show you there that the rent is by far the majority of what we do there with percentages. And then it goes down from there. Hospitals are a significant portion as well. Requests for services. Now, requests I want to distinguish are different from applications. The request, you can have more than one request per application. So the number of requests are going to be higher than the number of applications. Somebody might come in and they might request, do one application but have a request for rent, utilities, or meds, so there may be 3 requests in that application. I've highlighted in red the high number or high frequency numbers of applications or requests that we've received. And those requests, the highest number there being the rent and utility. And you can see the numbers that were approved and the numbers denied, and then no further contact, and then pending. The utility numbers kind of stood out to me there. It's kind of high in terms of 694, only 492 approved. So it's probably, 59, 60% there. The reason for that is staff have been extremely diligent and consistent at tapping into other resources, more specifically LEAP energy assistance at the state levels. So during the winter months from October through April every year, we really diligently and consistently tap into state resources so that we don't need to spend as much on the local level on those. Request count by type. We're looking at the number of requests broken down by service, as well as the percentages of those number of requests per service. So we've got rent, obviously a majority of what we provide for services there at way up at over 40%. Then we have utilities, about 16%, hospitals, 14%, and so on. So the approved requests, these are the number of requests from the various services that were approved, and then the percentages of those services that were approved. Rent was a high one again, and then keep back up just one there, please.
Yep.
Yeah, rent was a high one. Medications is a high number of percentage approval, and then utility as well. The reason on the medications, because we get a lot of medication requests, and those are typically prescription emergency medications. And we wouldn't want to deny a lot of those and have somebody end up in the hospital with a huge hospital bill that we have to pay and that type of thing. It makes sense to pay a $40 medication for a heart medication or diabetic medication or that type of thing. We work very diligently to get people on patient assistance programs through the manufacturer for free. So that's why we temporarily do this type of medication assistance. It's typically a couple weeks or a month, and then we get them on the free meds and that type of a thing. We developed patient referral forms that educate the clients as well as the providers that they go to, so that we could better serve them and help the county save money as well. When we implemented that form about 6-7 years ago, after we moved into the new building, after a year it was saving us 6 figures in medication costs. So when we got the caseworkers to consistently implement that form, to get the providers to sign them up for patient assistance, and we printed out patient assistance applications so they could get these medications free through their through the manufacturers. Okay, so we approve a lot of those, but we don't spend a whole lot on them anymore because of that fact that we've tapped into patient assistance. The denied request, they're at rent. Rent is higher, probably because we see more of that, more so than anything else. The hospital, that number's high in terms of higher in terms of the services we provide, and the numbers denied. And most of that's with state statute. Statute is very clear, and in terms of what you need to deny based on, and there's a lot of denial statutes there that dictate that number. Denial actions by type and frequency. We got, I had 5 pages of these. We have a lot of different denial actions in different categories, but I just pulled up the top frequency numbers, the highest numbers. The highest numbers in general categories being over income and other resources. We go off of federal poverty guidelines for assistance and for income. Supportive program enrollments. we talk supportive programs, these are other programs that we have other than emergency services and medical. So we're talking Safe Home, the housing for the chronic homeless, Alliance, recidivism in the jails, working with individuals out there doing outreach to reduce recidivism into the jails population, and Synergy. We've got a couple case managers in the Synergy program that works with homeless families, some of our more difficult families to serve in the community, and they do daily outreach to the Bishop Dudley House. Now, Alliance, Synergy, I want to point out, that's a newer program. We just started that, so some of the minutes and some of the numbers, program enrollments are going to be smaller on that one because we just started that program, and a second case manager just rolled into that program about a month or two ago, and they just started entering data. So numbers are going to be a little bit smaller for that one there. So these are the minutes by program, so the number of contact minutes with individuals that they had in the programs, worked with in the programs. Safe Home at 78% of the minutes, and then down to Alliance at 22, and so on. Programs by action, we can see how that time was spent by the case managers. And you can see at Alliance, most of that time was spent doing outreach to the jail or into the community there, whereas office visits were about 22% of that time, which makes sense because they're mostly doing the outreach. Safe Home kind of flip-flopped here. Most of the time spent with the individuals were in the office visits. Because they live there permanently, it's permanent supportive housing for those individuals up there, and they have case managers on site. So that would make sense as well. They do some outreach to the jails, and they do some home visits from time to time. Program minutes by action for Synergy. Here again, they're out in the community a lot, 60% in the community with their contacts and time spent with clients. Most of that time is spent at Bishop Dudley Shelter, and they do visit that on a daily basis and work with families in the family rooms there. Medical claims are separate from the regular applications, so I wanted to do just a quick blurb on those here. You can see from the various, from Lincoln County and Minnehaha County and from Sanford and McKinnon, or Vera I should say, from the different hospitals, the numbers, and then the invite letters sent. Quite a few invite letters, almost 700 out there last year. We're still looking at 2015 again here. Claims and deposition, 58. And then the final thing I'm going to cover is just veteran requests. We have a vet service officer in our office, Pat Krupa, and she's been with the office over 30 years, very knowledgeable, and she has served, I wanted to get you, so you have to understand that she served just more than Minnehaha County and Sioux Falls veterans, that there's from all over different counties. And under other, you know, the 27 there, she said one of those was actually from some county in Iowa that she actually served in. Didn't know where to turn, didn't know what to do, didn't understand about the benefits, and she was able to sign them up and help them out with that. Requests by benefit type. Those are the types of benefits that veterans are requesting. So you can see the highest, there are almost a quarter of them, pensions. And then we go down to compensation and burial benefits. Folks have questions on those, what to do, you know, and down from there. Request by actions shows how the time was spent by vet service officer. A lot of that time was phone call, discussion, and working with VetRespect software. She has digital software now that she's tapped into with the state that she can fast track applications and that type of thing and get claims in quicker and have digital signatures done right there in her office. And so we've got office visits at 23%, letters sent, or letters out to individuals at 35%, and then down from there. So that kind of, you know, we just wanted to spend a few minutes just to give a little rundown. We know it's been some time with all of our transitions with staff and software and stuff. That's been since we give a report. So hopefully this will give you a little better understanding of what we've done the past year in terms of programs and services, you know. Any questions?
Any questions of Jamie before they hand out the test paper?
Yeah, right.
There is a quiz.
Jamie, I've asked this question before, I know, but on the rents and utilities, are these short-term help? Are they limited to 1 or 3 months, or how do you?
Yeah, in generally, typically it's short-term assistance, you know. Typically we do it for a month, once in a while it'll be 2 months, you know. And in those cases where it's 2 or 3 months, it's typically somebody's had a medical situation, somebody's had an injury, they're off employment, that type of situation. And at times like that, we do medical reviews as well. We have a doctor that comes through once a week from Falls Community Health that we have review medical records to verify that the person is going to be off, why they're off work, and for what period of time, and that type of thing. So we kind of got an idea of how long we're going to need to help. So people can continue to qualify, so it's not just restricted to one time a year or one-time assistance in Minnehaha County for rent or utilities, but they need to do an application each time, and they need to qualify under the guidelines and the procedures and policies, you know.
But they can't be on this for a year or 2 years?
No, we'd be looking at tapping into other resources, and even if the person was permanently disabled, then we'd be tapping them into applying for disability through the Social Security office, as well as HUD, which would be subsidized housing. And typically, in our community, it'll take anywhere from 1 to 3 months to get approved for and move into subsidized housing, which would be permanent affordable housing paid for by the feds. So we're kind of the short-term assistance while we're waiting for longer-term things to get in place at the various levels, like state or federal assistance.
If I may, one
Sure.
more. On the enrollments, Safe Home showed 25. What, is that for the whole year? Is that where you had caseworkers? I mean, we
Yeah,
got
that-
30, 32, 33.
If 25 individuals, so they're not duplicated. There's been some folks that were served from the prior year or this year, but that would just be 2015. We're not looking at 2016 in this report. So those were the ones that were served unduplicated for 2015 only.
But our total Safe Home, Carol, you can help me on this, it must be, what, 100 or 150 people were involved, or maybe less than 100, but.
Right, I think the main difference is that we certainly have had, what this really focuses on is the people that are actually living there. So we have had 25 individuals, and a portion of those have been repeats. So they have lived with us, they've moved out, and now they've returned. So we didn't want to have duplicative number. So it just identifies here that there's 25. Just know that in that, the remaining
25
number.
names then, okay.
Commissioner Barth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a few questions. You know, I see where, for example, funerals are up, and I know that was an issue a couple years back when I think we had 70-some, and it cost us $200,000. We went to the legislature to try to get permission to do cremations. But now that number is even higher. Is that a budget buster at this point? And I guess while I'm at it, is there any one of these aspects that's out of control as far as the cost burgeoning in one area or another?
No, I don't see anything as being out of control. And we did have some extra in our budget left this past year. We spent them. I know we spent everything that was in rent. That was a big item, but we didn't have any overages there. The motel expenses were way down because the Bishop Dudley opened up, and so that saved us close to 6 figures on motel expense in 2015. It was just way down. So that freed up a lot of money, more that we could help more in the rental area with deposits, initial rents, or to prevent evictions for families and so on. So there was that. With the funerals, I don't see that as the expenditures really didn't. There might be a little higher number that we've seen, but we're paying less now. Now that we renegotiated that recently, we're paying less rates. So when we do direct cremations, we're only paying $1,000 now, and a lot of people have shifted towards doing cremation rather than full burial with caskets. And I don't know why that is. Just think over the past 5 years, people have gotten a lot more comfortable with doing cremations rather than burial with caskets in the traditional type sense. So that's saved a lot, you know, having to pay the $1,000. And then the $2,250 we pay for, basically for, with all the services and all that type of stuff. So it is less that we're paying now, and, we've
Well, I
been
hate to
very
say that's
diligent.
good news, but that is good news. So what about medical or medications? And I see that we have a category there, and obviously there's an issue with abuse of prescription drugs. And in fact, Dr. Snell recently at breakfast was telling us that that's one of the biggest hazards is prescription drugs that people are being killed by.
Yeah.
Do we have some kind of protocol to, what if I come in and say, my dog ate my 4,000 tablets of
Yeah,
Vicodin?
exactly.
And-
Yep. We've seen that, we've heard that before, Jeff. But yeah, we have a restriction. Basically I noticed that about 5 years back, we had a big issue with that. And it probably back before that, it was probably, 8 years ago that I started noticing that we were getting a lot more prescriptions. People were doing a lot more shopping of narcotic drugs. They were going to different doctors, different pharmacies. We started to pick up on that, and so we did discuss with some of the providers, that prescribing and stuff. And I think in terms of the medical establishment has come a long way since then in terms of really restricting that and having a database of connecting with each other to who's getting what and where in terms of controlled substances and tracking that. And we have really stood up in terms of getting the caseworkers consistent and diligent at looking at that. And we've set parameters for assistance with that as well in terms of it's a one-time only basis, and that's it, you're done. So it's been quite a few years that we've been doing that, and it's really decreased the number of folks that come in for those type of things, that are seeking and that type of thing, and we can usually spot it a mile away. So it's like a one-time deal. Even if it's a week supply, you're done. And if it's a month supply, you're done after that. We don't do any more than that. And we also look at why do you need it? Were you recently injured? Did you break a leg? Do you have cancer that's causing serious pain? Then we need to document that and verify that. If you've been taking this controlled substance for 2 years, and you're claiming back pain, but you're walking around just fine, everything's fine, it's probably not, it's not something we're going to assist with.
Well, I know that our citizens, I don't think, would want us to enable anybody to
No.
damage themselves that way. And I guess lastly, the hospitals bill us considerably. How is the status of those kind of bills coming into us?
We've really been fortunate to have Mike Thompson, who has been brought on board to help us with that. Just because of person's time being so strapped, we've had Mike come in. We're diligently working on those. We currently are working on a settlement with Avira, and we've processed about 240 claims that they have filed with us. And Mike has really done a phenomenal job of helping us sort through those and get to the bottom of those. I think we'll probably be in the best shape that we've been for a long time in regards to that because of that push. So, yes, we get sued a lot and we get asked to pay a lot, but we've done due diligence on doing a lot of good research and data collection. So, in regards to that, we did put in a request to have monies from last year's budget move forward to this year, in hopes that we can take care of all those past bills and then be able to sign an agreement with Avira and possibly Sanford that we not go back past a certain year, that once we pay those and we're settled through, even if we can go to 2012 would be great. And then anything past that or beyond that is done. So we're making headway.
Other questions? Commissioner?
I just have a comment more than a question. I just want to thank you guys for coming. I was fortunate to be your liaison last year and learned a lot about all the various services that your department provides. And I want to thank IT as well, because I think that this is a great tool, not only for us as commissioners, for you guys in budgeting and providing better more appropriate services to your clients. So thank you very much
Yeah,
for coming
and I'm
today.
going to give kudos to Steve Millage in IT. He has been outstanding in terms of coding the software from scratch, customizing the software, and has been so user-friendly. We've been able to train new caseworkers immediately, just so quickly now
Couple
with
weeks.
this new software. It's so user-friendly. It has no bugs whatsoever. It works very stable, much more stable than some third-party software would by far. And we had a lot less bugs to deal with as a result as well. So I have to give kudos to him and for Monty for allowing this to happen. We really appreciate this. It's really brought us to a whole nother level, Human Services. And I want to thank you guys thank you all for allowing us to come in and give you this update.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for the information.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate that. Robert?
Commissioners, Robert Wilson of the Commission Office with the legislative update for this week. And I will tell you that I will be brief. My update will be much like it was last week in the sense that now tomorrow is crossover day, and much of the activity that we're watching and the bills that we're watching specifically have already made their way through their House of Origin. We're waiting for them to be heard on the other side, and today and tomorrow the calendars are quite full of bills that have to make that deadline tomorrow. I think we notified all of you yesterday that there was a possibility that Senate Bill 2 may have been heard on the House floor, and that just with their calendar and their workload prior to crossover day, that didn't happen. Checked the calendars again this morning. It looks like both Senate Bill 2, which would redistribute a portion of the alcohol tax to counties, and also House Bill 1005, which would increase some of the fees collected by the Treasurer's Office and the Auditor and the Sheriff's Office. Both of those are very low down on the respective agendas, and with their other business, we're not certainly not expecting to get to those today or tomorrow, most likely. Would mention a couple of bills that we've been following that are scheduled for hearings today and tomorrow. There's an open government bill that would require at least one of your meetings a month be conducted after business hours. That will be heard today in House Local Government. There's another one that would prescribe that county directors of equalization be an elected position. That will also be heard today in committee. We've got a couple others tweaking some minor tweaks of open government statutes heard tomorrow, and then one that has been introduced in two forms, a House version and a Senate version, that would direct municipalities to repay counties for certain judicial and law enforcement expenditures. That is up tomorrow in joint appropriations. That was the other version of that. Testimony was taken a couple of weeks ago. It appears that they're just waiting to take testimony on the two bills, combine them and act on them in one. That will be heard tomorrow. So that really is my update. Obviously, if you've got questions on specific bills, I'll do my best to answer them. But once we get over this hurdle of crossover day, get everything that is going to move forward past that benchmark, then we'll have some more updates that we'll be able to provide for you.
Questions of Robert? If not, liaison assignment reports, any liaison reports? Any new business?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I did attend a East Dakota Water District meeting in Brookings, and it was written up in the Argus. Some people at SDSU and at the School of Mines have been doing studies on the Big Sioux River and Rapid Creek, looking at E. coli, and a lot of the E. coli is fine that's in the river. By the way, that's one of the reasons the river is brown, but some of that stuff mutates during the year and becomes toxic, and they're working to identify the process that this mutating E. coli does become toxic, and It's, don't drink it.
Any old business? If not, we do have executive session for personnel and contract negotiations.
I'd move to adjourn into executive session for personnel and contract negotiations.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned.